North versus the South. Differences. The climate. The South is much warmer than the North, therefore they grow different kinds of crops, and some better than others. Because of these different crops, the South had more slavery because they needed slaves to pick all the cotton off the plants. Well, and that's why the North was against slavery, because they didn't have use of slaves in their area. The economy. The North territories were much more developed in terms of factories, which means they made more money on factory things. While the South territories were based on farming and the plantation systems, which meant they relied more on the land than mechanics. The social-cultural differences. The North, they allowed more social mobility, and which meant that at the top of the ladder were politicians, industrialists, and businessmen. The middle class, after the Industrial Revolution, put more workers in the middle class and made the farmers at the lowest part of the ladder. And they also had an increased need for an educated society, which means that they had more educated people than the South did. And the reform movement started the growth of the newspaper. The South is an agricultural society. So the South was much more stratified with distinct layers. And they had wealthy plantations owners, and they owned most of the slaves, and they were at the top of the society. And the lower class white farmers had no slaves at all. There are political differences. The North, they had sectional differences, with the South leading to political differences, and the reform movements got more involved with politics. The South, they had sectional differences too, and with the South leading to political differences, they had strong believers in the states' rights. Transportation. The North, they had more roads extending west from the eastern cities, which means they had more movement in transportation. And they also had steamboats and clipper ships. And the Erie Canal was built to connect the Great Lakes to the Hudson River to transport goods, which means that they could make more money transporting goods. And they also had 2/3 of the railroads. And while the South, they relied on more natural waterways. Steamboats moved cash crops along the rivers of the South, meaning that they could also have more money with crops. And they also relied on smaller waterways that connected to the Mississippi, and they had less than 1/3 of the American railroads. The end.